Hi and welcome back to my channel. My name is Rebecca and as some of you may know, I'm German. I was born and raised here in Germany and I thought it would be interesting to make a video about the financial habits that I grew up thinking were standard before I found out that other countries might see that very differently. And now that I'm an adult and I have learned a lot about personal finance, I think that some of those habits are pretty smart financial moves and others not so much, but more on that later. A little disclaimer here, while the points that I will mention in this video are probably true for many Germans, they are obviously very influenced by my particular childhood, the area, the social class that I grew up in, so not every German will have the same experience that I did. Okay, disclaimer out of the way. Let's get started with a fun one, eating out. When I grew up, my parents rarely went out to eat with us, and what I mean with that is maybe 3 times a year, I don't know. It was for special occasions only, so only if there was a celebration or something. And if you now think that instead we got a lot of takeaway food, nope, never. I don't even recall my parents ever ordering a pizza or anything else to be delivered to the house. I can't think of a single instance. While I think that many other Germans had a similar experience growing up, we are a different generation now, so as adults we do things a little differently. I personally go out to eat much more than my parents used to do, and I also order food every once in a while, but for me it still feels like treating myself. So what I've taken away from that is that this habit has huge saving potentials because in most of the cases it's cheaper to buy your own groceries and make your meal at home than to buy something, especially with delivery fees or tips. So I do want to keep the default at making my food at home, but since I'm a person that doesn't like cooking very much, I do like to treat myself every once in a while. Next up, credit cards. In Germany it is, or at least it used to be the norm to pay with debit cards. There were many places that wouldn't even accept a credit card as a form of payment. So the only reason you would basically want to get a credit card was to maybe get a rental car when you're on vacation or to pay for things outside of Germany. There are still many people who don't have their own credit card, and those that do have maybe 1 or 2 maximum. So the idea of having multiple credit cards seems a little strange to Germans. Hearing that in the US there's a lot of credit card debt and that people max out their credit cards and buy things with money that isn't even theirs, that's very strange to me. I'm not saying there's no debt in Germany. There are obviously people who also have credit card debt here, but I would say it's less common than in the US. That takes us to the next point, loans. What I was implicitly taught is that you only use credit or loans when absolutely necessary. Obviously, you would buy your house with a loan because who has that kind of money sitting around? But other than that, if you don't have the money, then you can't afford to buy it. Remember the times when phones barely had an internet connection, and remember the horror you would feel when you accidentally hit that browser button? The fear that you had just spent hundreds of euros and you got your family in huge financial problems. That's kind of the feeling that I would feel when my bank account hit 0 or I was going over. I'm not saying it never happened. In my 20s it definitely did, at least once or twice. So what do I think about these now? Well, I'm thankful that I learned that overdrafting your bank accounts and loans come at a cost and you want to avoid interest whenever possible. However, I do see why credit cards are so big in the US, especially where you have to build your credit and there are all these benefits and perks with them. So I'm not automatically against credit cards. If you use them correctly, you can take advantage of the benefits, but don't get that many credit cards that you lose the overview. By the way, if how loans or credit cards work is a complete mystery to you, then check out my Absolute Basics video that I did where I expect 0 previous knowledge. Let's move to another fun topic, makeup. We have these drugstores that are very popular, and this is where you buy anything from shampoo, toilet paper to makeup. These stores carry all kinds of drugstore makeup brands, and let me show you what these prices are. There are the cheap makeup brands like Catrice or Essence, where prices for a concealer are about 3 to 5 euros. And then there are brands like Max Factor or L'Oreal that would be considered the expensive ones. We didn't have a Sephora in Germany until a couple of years ago, so if you wanted to get high-end makeup brands, you had to go to places like Karstadt or Douglas. But in my experience, that was never a thing, at least not where I grew up. I didn't know anyone who bought there, so growing up for me, L'Oreal was an expensive makeup brand. With Sephora coming here and all of those beauty reviews and makeup reviews online, it has become much more of a thing to buy more expensive makeup brands. But I don't think this should be the new norm. Like, how is it normal to spend 25 euros on a concealer? If you want a few special products in your makeup collection, I totally get that, but buying everything high-end and spending hundreds of euros in Sephora? Nope. But that's just my 2 cents. Next up, comparing prices. I don't know whether it's just me or my family, but I compare prices on almost everything. Especially big purchases lead me down a rabbit hole of endless hours of internet research and comparing all of the options there are before I can decide on which option I want to spend my hard-earned money on, but also supermarket purchases. Have you ever taken a look at the little label that says like the price per ounce or price per gram or kilograms? I definitely did that, at least all throughout college when I had to save a lot of money and I was living on a low income. I actually still think it's a good habit when you want to save, especially for the big purchases, because you could save hundreds of dollars with that, with just comparing prices and making sure you don't buy something where all the reviews says it falls apart after a week. And if you want to keep your expenses low, it's also great to incorporate that in your daily life, for example, on your grocery runs. The last thing I want to mention is what we do with our money to keep it safe and make it grow. Germans are big on saving, and we are very cautious when it comes to managing that money or investing it. As a matter of fact, the Boston Consulting Group has found that 40% of all wealth in Germany is kept in either saving accounts or cash. And that's about 10% more than what the average West European keeps in savings or cash. The problem with that? Well, even in high-yield saving accounts, the interest you get on your money is usually lower than what your money will lose with inflation. Investing money in the stock market feels too risky for most Germans, so only about 1 in 7 people here invest in stocks or funds. By the way, the saving mentality has been researched by Professor Guerin, I hope I pronounced that correctly, from Princeton. He found out that saving banks have been very common in Europe early on, and they only started existing in the US much later. And over there, they were not supported by the government, not like here in Europe. That means while Germans learned early on in school that saving is a good thing and that being frugal was one of the goals, and all these institutions made it easy to save and rewarded that behavior, Americans, on the other hand, were encouraged to spend their money. There was no need after the Second World War to save. There wasn't war damage as there was in Europe. So to promote economic growth, they encouraged Americans to spend, to build houses, and to take on credit. So that kind of explains why Germans are so big on saving money. It was a necessity after the Second World War, and it was drilled into the brains of our grandparents. They had no other choice. And while I think it's a great thing to save because it means that you're not spending all of your money and you are preparing yourself for big purchases, emergencies, or your retirement, I do think Germans should invest more. I personally have started investing in my mid-20s and I wish I would have started earlier. It can be scary to start investing, I totally get that. And if that's you, then take a look at my 5 myths of investing video and also check out my investing playlist. But for now, thank you so much for watching and definitely let me know in the comments down below what financial habits are normal in your country. I would love to hear from you because money beliefs and money behaviors are so different everywhere. So let me know in the comments. I hope you have a great rest of your week and I will see you in the next video.